Hi there, I'm Matt Hines with DevOps TV for DevOps.com. It does 16. We're joined by Phil Lerner, who's here with Optum, the technology arm of United Healthcare Group. And Phil, I understand you've been talking about continuous security monitoring within the context of DevOps, which is great. We haven't had a ton of conversations about security here yet this week. I've got a long security background, so I'm interested to hear, what's the state of play? Where have things evolved to in terms of continuous monitoring was some verbiage we heard in security for a long time, but I guess this is now becoming more of a practicality in terms of, again, how DevOps is evolving.
Yeah, so we're just beginning our DevOps journey. I'd say we started down the Agile path from a program perspective about a year ago. And, many debates about can you have DevOps without Agile and Agile without DevOps. We have both, which I'm happy about because it brings structure to DevOps world, a little bit of structure. So sure. From my perspective, we're a really unique opportunity because I think the most progressive proof of concept that we have at UHG, which is surrounded by probably about 3,000 developers in this one development organization of two, piled on, and they're really excited and we're enabled to sort of think of outside the box and move away from the legacy enterprise, which has its fit in many cases, but for what they're trying to do, which is weekly postcode, into prod, we wanted to enable them. So the security folks actually built the path for the development and operations community to get to DevOps. And I think we're still on that journey. I think that's a project that never ends, but I think we're continuously improving and looking at ways to build in seamless and transparent security for the development community. And what's interesting is we took the plunge to DevOps at the same time as we took the plunge to cloud. So I used cloud as the on-ramp for DevOps in the enterprise. And this progressive proof of concept that we're in started with a very small team, which it still has, very focused on outcomes and goals and getting to market fast, as the CTO we're working with asks for pretty often. Sure. They've sort of given us the keys and said, make it happen. Our CISO definitely believes that, being part of it in the beginning is sort of the way to influence the best behavior. And we see the DevOps folks typically, as we feel part of that family definitely now, as embracing that. So they come to us in a consultant advice capacity, and I think we've built something pretty special with them.
Cool. Yeah, we had a webcast coming into the conference with all the organizers, Gene Kim and Nicole Forsgren in the group, right? And it was a great conversation about security versus compliance, right? United Healthcare Group, obviously HIPAA, all the various healthcare compliance initiatives that are out there, independent of the business compliance initiatives. So the conversation kind of evolved to, why does security and compliance have to be the same thing? Obviously, a lot of compliance is security rather is compliance driven. I mean, it gets a little foggy in there, but do you guys differentiate? Is it all part of the same effort? How is that evolving?
Great question, Matt. So information risk management at Optum UHG is a big team. We have 1,000 people in IT, security, and risk management. We have 10,000 people in IT, maybe a little more. So yeah, we do differentiate. I mean, we have our architecture teams that are more focused on engineering and ops. We have our entire own cyber defense organization, which mans our own SOCs. Very strong risk management and governance processes, which we're looking to apply to both cloud as well as the DevOps enterprise. And it's just really technical, more on the technical side for engineering and architecture, and more on business process, and risk management to align with the business goals. So we combine them, but they're separate teams all under one umbrella. At Optum we call information risk management.
Sure. Right. Again, from a process standpoint, how do you see things evolving? Cloud and DevOps at the same time. Some people could look at that and say, wow, you bit off a lot right there. And that's going to make, for security and compliance nightmares. At the same time, there's a lot of enabling processes and technologies in there that could make things easier, right? Shift left, does it make things easier? It certainly maybe makes things more effective at the end of the day, right? You're trying to increase velocity. Again, I'm throwing a lot of concepts at you, but where do you see the benefits? How are things, where are the best practices emerging?
It's interesting. Capital One talked about like the 30 patterns, if you will, that emerged out of DevOps. We're right about to be in the risk management and governance phase of this. The technical security work has begun when our POC kicked off. But I see, continuous security monitoring or bringing good, solid, traditional infrastructure practices into the cloud and surrounding the pipeline, with as few tools possible to make management easy. Mm-hmm. And that brings, security to the forefront, really, where it's transparent for the DevOps folks, but we're constantly looking at, risk, constantly determining what threat levels are, constantly logging and monitoring, have gates that we've built between zones, and really took a network security approach to what surrounds our pipeline. And unlike many people in the industry who believe it's all about the tools, I'm definitely more of a culture and use the tools we know in the enterprise, leverage them end to end. We know how to manage them very well. We innovate around them. We push our vendors to build, APIs to do things that we would like to do to, innovate in the virtual space, and innovate in the virtual security space. So I see it as, other people, scream sort of DevOps, what's going to happen. Instead of going down that route, part of a innovation and strategy team that's more focused on just diving right in. And, it's been a really, really good journey so far. And the people that I'm working with are some of the smartest people I've seen in the industry in 25 years. So very progressive culturally. And we have a habit of, sometimes things move slowly. Here, we may have started off with a small team and moving slowly, but it's hammer time. And we are moving as fast as possible at this point, and making our gates and checkpoints, and really feel that we're giving the developers everything they want, plus, what we want, which is accountability, and ownership, of the operations of the DevOps world from a security perspective. So it doesn't turn into a constant operational drain for our traditional security folks in cyber defense. So, we've given them the keys to the kingdom in this environment, but created such a layered security approach that even if they do stuff that, is questionable, we have the ability to back them out, and back them down, and have built in a layered approach end to end. So I'm actually really positive about how progressive this has been. What's interesting to note is this environment that we've created is only going to be initially for a single app, maybe a single associated database, no PHI, no PII, no protected data. So we have a different strategy for protected data and PHI, and that will likely reside in a very strongly controlled environment. So this is more of a progressive sort of leap environment, that may have some of the underpinnings of traditional enterprise.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think looking at the program the last couple of days, I was actually, as someone who came out of security, was in that world for 10 years and was completely and totally, ensconced in it. I was surprised there wasn't as much security content here as I thought there might be. My guess is that as things roll forward, right, we're going to see a lot more. We're not just going to see source code analysis vendors upstairs, right, in the vendor area. We're going to see a lot more around maybe API management, or secure release automation, things like that. But it's interesting to hear the position around PI, personally identifiable information, right?
What's interesting to me is we feel, from a security perspective, we feel very enabled because we sort of drove the movement to its inception, and are following real closely, hands in it still. I think that'll always be the case, but we weren't peering in from the outside and included late. I think culturally that's the biggest change for us.
Sure.
Since we drove it and sort of went to the development community and said, what do you need? And they said, well, we'd like to do these couple of things. And they were big things. And we sort of stepped back and said, well, we're on a journey to the cloud. We tend to do things carefully, traditionally, but, conservative but progressive, if you will. And now I think we're in such a good place where we really show the alignment between security and the other technology groups, as well as an enabler for the business, which really sees this as a potential to have ultimate growth. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of applications, homegrown in COTS. We're talking about a single app to start this thing off. I could see a couple of hundred apps in this environment with really one tenant, and that's our development and operations community. So very exciting to be part of this. cool to be out of ops and focused on strategy and innovation, and have the ultimate respect for those folks, but no longer getting the calls in the middle of the night because, sort of we built, I think, a very strong relationship with our development and operations community.
Wow, security is an enabler. No,
It's a big change.
That's a different world.
It's
right?
a big change.
Anyhow, Phil, thanks so much for joining us today. It's a great conversation. I'm sure we'll get a chance to continue it at some point. Again, I'm Matt Hines with DevOps TV for DevOps.com here at Does 16. Thanks for joining us.